This is Mike from Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and on today's video I'm going to show you how to install the APNX AP1-V on either the Intel or AMD platforms. We're going to go through each one separately. There will be timestamps in the video description and also shortcuts, so if one is more appropriate than the other, or if you just want to learn how it works on both platforms, feel free to watch the whole video. It's always good for the algorithm. So we've got two platforms here. We've got an AM5. So the AM5 is going to be exactly the same as the AM4. We've also got a mini ITX motherboard here. This is on the LGA1700 socket, which is also exactly the same as the LGA1200 and also the LGA115X range. So with all that done, let's start on the AMD one. So when we're doing an AMD installation, let's take a look at the parts we're going to need to perform the complete process. Obviously you need your motherboard, the cooler itself. You will need this top plate, the main bracket. You'll also need the AMD parts bag with the red plastic risers and also the black screws. Also, you'll need the thermal paste of choice. It comes with some already, so if you want to use that, feel free to do, or if you want to use your own thermal paste, feel free to swap that out. Other things you'll need is a cross-headed screwdriver, PH2 ideally. And that's pretty much it, so let's get started. So this is our stock setup. So we've got our processor installed, so we need to remove the stock AMD AM4 or AM5 brackets and screws. So let's start with that. And put those away somewhere for safekeeping. Next we're going to need our AMD parts bag. With the plastic standoffs, they appear to be the same on both ends. One side is slightly more snug than the other, but realistically it doesn't matter which way up you put them. So attach these into the 4 positions surrounding the socket, and that part is done. Next we can offer up the mounting bracket, and as you can see there are small little U-shape indentations into the metal to allow the screws to go through. Line those up with the plastic brackets. Make sure when you've got this installed that these screws on the outer edges are facing up. If you install it this way round, you won't be able to attach your cooler. So make sure the threaded side is face up. I would get all 4 of the screws started and lowered very slightly, but not snug, just so we can get things lined up. With the 4 screws in, but not completely tight, just give it a very slight wiggle just to make sure that it's seated correctly. And then you can go around and do the final tightening down. Do those at opposing sides. And that is the bracket installed. Now at this point you can apply your thermal paste. I'm not going to for this instance because I'm going to be taking it apart straight after, but at this point now put in a small blob of thermal paste in the center of the CPU. Then we can install the CPU cooler itself. Now this is a really cool design. We don't need to do anything at all with the actual CPU cooler and the tower. All of the bracketry which is needed is actually connected and is permanently connected. So we don't need to install the fan because that is permanently attached. And these screws at the bottom, which go at the front and also at the back, those are captive as well, so we don't need to do anything here. All we need to do is to line up those 2 screws with the pillars actually on the bracket and drop it into position, making sure that the wires are out of the way. So we'll start with the rear first of all. So what we want to do is to get our screwdriver, do a couple of anti-clockwise or reverse turns just until you hear the click. And there's a little click there. That means the thread is lined up. So now we can do some forward turns, do about 4, just to get the thread started. We can then turn it around and do the same on the other side. Now we can do the same on the front, so reverse turns until we hear the click, and then do about 4 turns to get it started. Now we can do the same on the front and the back, do about 3 or 4 turns on each side, alternating. You can keep screwing until the screw bottoms out at the very bottom, and you can't turn it any further. Don't try and over tighten it, that's going to be absolutely fine. So that is the CPU cooler installed. There is a little bit of play in there, just a little bit of movement, but it shouldn't wobble around too much, just a very slight flexing of the board and also the heat pipes. So that's absolutely fine. So we can move on now to connecting up the PWM and also the addressable RGB. So we've got two wires coming off. This is our addressable RGB, and also we've got our PWM. So the PWM one's probably the easiest to do. So that is on this board, the CPU header, which is just under there. So there's our PWM. On this board, the addressable RGB header is over on this side. So we can grab our connector, just make sure you line up the pins and holes, and then attach it. And there we go, that is our addressable RGB header connected. If you want to, there is actually a pass-through. So if you want to connect up additional addressable RGB devices, you can daisy chain or piggyback them off of this connector. If you're not going to be piggybacking, leave the little plastic connector on there so it doesn't short circuit. So there we go, there is the AMD installation done. So now I'm going to strip this all down and we can go on and do the Intel one. Okay, so now we're going to do the Intel installation. So this is compatible with LGA 1700, LGA 1200 and LGA 11.5X, so that's all of the 11.5 range. To do this, you're going to need a little bit more of the components actually included. So obviously you're going to need your thermal paste potentially. You are going to need the top plate, that is universal across all of the platforms. You also need your Intel screw bag and fittings, and also the extra bit here, we're going to need the backplate because Intel boards don't come with backplates, as you probably know. So this is suitable for LGA 11.5X and LGA 1200. If you're going to be using that, then make sure that these little plastic bits on the end are in the inward position, so the closest they can this way. If you're using LGA 1700 or potentially a newer Intel socket, which I think is going to be LGA 1851 possibly, then make sure it's on the outside one, so just wiggle the plastic and pull it out to the outside end. There is also on here some double-sided adhesive on here, which can make installation a little bit easier. In this particular instance, I'm not going to be using that because I want to take this straight off after for other testing. But essentially, you pull those off, pull the tabs off, and then when you put the backplate onto the motherboard, as we'll flip this one over now, so line up these little tiny holes, or screw holes, with the holes on the back of the motherboard. And it should kind of just drop into place. And you will have something which looks something very similar to that. Now obviously, because we haven't got the adhesive done, then if we let go of this, the backplate's just going to fall straight off. So if you've got this in a system and it's upright or something, then you do want to use that adhesive. So for this part now, we're going to need our Intel parts bag, so the blue standoffs and the chrome or silver screws. And again with these, I don't think it really makes any difference at all which way up they are. They should fit on either way. So place one over the top of each one of the screw mounts. And then next, grab your brackets, again with the threads face up, and place over the top and line it up approximately. Once you get the screws started, you should find that it kind of squares up nicely and gets itself into the right position. So don't worry about these screws being slightly off-centered or misaligned. As you tighten these up, it will kind of pull itself into place. So I'm going to grab the screwdriver now and do up the rest. I wouldn't do it up all the way to begin with, just again like we did previously, just get it so it is slightly snug but not fully down. And then when they're pretty much all the way, you can go ahead and tighten them right down using the opposing sides. Now this will keep on turning a little bit because it's going to try and bend the back plate on the back, the metal, and just keep on going until the screw comes to pretty much a hard stop. This one's slightly more awkward because there is that little bit of flex, so you can keep on going round and kind of cinching it down ever so slightly more. So now to install the actual tower cooler onto the motherboard, again, as we said previously, all of the mounting hardware is fully connected, so you don't need to do anything. The only thing you will need to do, which I didn't mention on the previous one, is the obvious, obviously, remove the plastic from the base. And then put on your thermal paste. I'm not going to do that again because I'm going to be taking this apart, but put a small line of thermal paste on the CPU. The slight difference being with the Intel, because it's elongated, you can do a longer little strip, like a size of a piece of rice, whereas on the AMD, you generally do a small dot in the middle, so it goes outward because it's a square, whereas this is a rectangle. So once you've got your thermal paste ready, you can line up the screw holes again. So these bits here and here line up with the threaded sections. So let's just do that now. I'll do the back one first because it's a little bit easier for me to do. And then you can kind of drop it down onto the front one, and those are lined up. So let's give you a close-up and we'll tighten up the screws. So as we said previously, so we're going to start on the front this time, so do a couple of reverse turns, or anti-clockwise, until you hear a little bit of a click. I'll do that again. So there's the click, so then you can do 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's just going to get it started. So now we're going to spin it around and do the other side. So do a couple of reverse turns. Oh, there's a click straight away. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And then flip it around. And we can do the other side. 1, 2, 3, 4. And just keep on going until the screws reach the stopping point. So now we can connect up the cables. So again, we've got our PWM, which is going to be this one here. This one's a little bit tighter for me to get into, so hopefully you'll get the right idea, but just plug it into one of your connectors. So there's our PWM done. And unfortunately for us, the addressable RGB is actually just alongside that. So again, line up, make sure you've got the pins the right way around, such as that. And then we can attach that to the addressable RGB header. And push that fully in. As we said previously, there is actually a pass-through connector. So if you want to connect up additional addressable RGB devices, you do have this piggyback or fly lead, so you can connect up more. If you're not going to be using this extra, just make sure you keep the plastic cap on it to prevent any short circuits. So there you go, there is how to install the APNX AP1-V ARGB cooler. Available in black and white, so depending on what you want to do, there's options for both. I'll put links in the video description, so if maybe you've watched this video and you like the look of this and how easy it is to install, you might want to pick up one for yourself. It does actually cope with up to 245 watts of thermal power, so actually pretty decent cooler, and also at the moment actually quite a compelling price at around about £30 here in the UK, which actually does give a lot of competition to others on the market. There is also actually going to be a standalone video of this where we go through and do a review, and we will talk about the installation. So if you want to check that out, I'll link that in the video description also. I think this is actually a very, very compelling cooler, depending on your needs, obviously, if you don't need water cooling. So anyway, there you go. That is how to install the APNX AP1-V. I've been Mike. This is Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and hopefully we'll catch you in the very next video. Thanks for watching.